In the meantime, we go live on YouTube. And here we are. So good afternoon, everyone. While we wait for a few minutes for people to join in, I would like to give you a warm welcome this afternoon. We try with this experiment. It's a new format that I've been working on for quite some time, and U40, we are thinking that this is the nice way to get out of the crowded digital conversations that happen all the time. So, you know, the focus of today is actually you, the audience. Our idea is for you to be able to talk about something interesting with people that actually have their hands on in this case. So today we have here Simon Hania, who is the data protection officer at Uber. Very cool and interesting job, Simon, I have the feeling. So before giving you the floor for some starting remarks, we're also waiting for Alex Agius-Saliba, member of the European Parliament, rapporteur for the DSA in the S&D. I would like to give you a bit the context of today and a couple of housekeeping rules. So, as I mentioned, it's a new format. We're 21 in this call, we're 22, we're joining in. It's a Zoom meeting, as you can see, because we would like you to chip in. It's an Ask Me Anything. So the idea is, after a brief introduction from Simon, you will be able to ask your questions. There are a few rules. So the first rule is related to the topic. The topic is privacy and data. So I would kindly ask you to stick to that because we have only 35 minutes to discuss this topic. I see Alex is joining. I will give him the floor straight away. So first of all, we're discussing privacy and data. So feel free to ask any question. You can ask questions in a variety of ways. The first one is if you join our Slido, you can go to Slido, type in EU40 AMA. I drop it in the chat. You can ask questions through there. The other option that you have is to write in the chat to me. The third option that you have is to let me know that you want to speak. You can do so by using the emoji. You see them at the bottom. You can click on that, and I know you will want to have a questions, and I will give you the floor at some point. If you feel turn on the camera, it's always nice to know that we are not talking to a wall. Of course, if you take the floor, please turn on the camera, give us your name, and tell us what your question is. Having said that, privacy and data, there has been a lot of discussions in the past few years. In the European Parliament, GDPR came to life a few years ago. And now with the Digital Service Act, we are again talking about privacy, digital data, and digital services in general. And I'm truly honored and happy to have my friend Alex Agius-Saliba here today with us. He's the rapporteur in the European Parliament for the DSA. And I would like to ask him, Alex, what is for you? What is the topic? How is the topic related to what you are doing? And if you can give us a framework of what the Parliament is working on right now. Thank you very much, Alex.
First of all, thanks, Alessandro, and thanks again for EU40 for being at the forefront of basically organizing these important discussions, even during this particularly difficult time. So again, thanks, Alessandro, for your hard work, and thanks, EU40, for bringing up this very important debate. The respect of our privacy is an established right under the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. So that is the starting point of all the discussions. A person's private life, home, and correspondence must always and in all circumstances be protected. And no one should listen basically to our conversations, to our personal matters, open our letters, or go through our things. This is forbidden. And I think that this is a fundamental thing that is established in our democracies. However, what does privacy exactly mean in the digital world? When it comes to privacy, are we having the same level of protection offline as we are having online? And that is the biggest question that we have and we should answer. How does digitalization, how do platforms, algorithms, and data used to maximize basically digital services have benefited and have changed this very important debate? In the IMCO DSA report, we have introduced a very important principle. The principle of what is illegal offline should also be considered to be illegal online too. And this principle is hugely also relevant to the e-privacy debate. People should and must enjoy the same rights offline as they do online. And this also includes their right to privacy. In other words, if it is illegal for someone to listen to your calls in a physical world, it should be the same in the digital world. Algorithms and also data should not be used by digital platforms to track and basically predict every move that we make when surfing the internet. Listen to our phone calls and open our emails, messages, and correspondences. And most of it, they should not use our personal data. A couple of weeks ago, I was watching, I think, one of the most watched series on Netflix, The Social Dilemma. And there was a quote, a very important quote, which clearly struck and is striking the right chords even in today's debate. And this quote was something in the lines that we individuals, we consumers, have basically become the products for these big tech companies, for these digital platforms. And this should not be the case. First of all, we are all humans. We all have our fundamental rights, and our fundamental rights should always be protected, even in the digital ecosystem, even in the digital world. The IMCO DSA report does not directly deal with e-privacy. And one of the reasons is that at the moment there are still ongoing negotiations on the regulation on privacy and also electronic communications. Furthermore, we have also the EU data protection law, and this should be fully enforced, fully implemented throughout the Union. However, the DSA discussions are key for the debate on e-privacy. Digital services, the e-commerce directive, data protection rules, and the protection of one's privacy are very closely related topics and issues. And one cannot discuss privacy without discussing DSA or e-commerce. So all these subjects are all interlinked. The DSA and the DMA will bring an extra layer of protection in addition to the e-privacy regulation and also the data protection rules. One central issue for the DSA is that of protecting people and European companies from online harmful business models, manipulation, and also discriminatory practices. And such models are designed basically to maximize our user attention dedicated to the platform and based on the generation of more traffic, on the generation of more clicks, basically to amplify also illegal and sensationalist content and to go viral quickly. Mm-hmm. That is why the European Parliament in the DSA reports is proposing stricter provisions on targeting harmful advertising practices, for example, digital nudging, micro-targeted recommendation systems for advertisement, and also preferential treatments, therefore tackling directly harmful business models. People are tracked continuously when they are online, when they visit a website or open an app. Multiple companies are collecting information about them, what they read, what they click on, and what are their topics of interest. And such information is used to manipulate practices of targeting people because of their interests, because of their age, because of their gender, because of their religion, because of their sexual orientation, because of their skin color. And companies utilize this information. They gather and build user profiles, which are traded online and use that information in order to deliver behavioral targeting advertising. This profile could be used also to discriminate against consumers and also influence their behavior. Therefore, we need clear rules. We need clear rules. We need accountability. We need fairness criteria for such practices and for algorithms being used, and also for the information that ultimately is being collected by these companies. We need to ensure that such systems are, first of all, non-discriminatory, that they are transparent, and they also reflect the fundamental right of privacy.
Absolutely.
Further ado, I will give now the floor to today's speakers. Today's speaker, Simon Hania, Uber's also Global Data Protection Officer, which I totally believe that he can bring a very positive impetus and very good discussion centering about this fundamental right of privacy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alex. I think that is a fantastic introduction, and I think you touched upon a couple of points which are really interesting. So I indeed follow Alex. I give the floor to Simon. Simon, give us a brief overview of what we are talking today, and then we can jump into the various questions from the audience.
Yeah. So thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alessandro, for organizing this. We're pioneering here. I love that. So I've made myself available to help you pioneer this new format. That's great. So first, a little bit about myself. So indeed, I am the data protection officer at Uber. My background is, by the way, not in law, but in engineering. So I tend to look at how we create solutions, how we build things, rather than how we judge how things have gone wrong. So I try to focus on creating things. And I also think it's important to just remind people of what a DPO is and does, particularly at Uber. So my role actually is threefold. So first of all, I am a guide. Second, I'm a watchdog. And third, I'm an ambassador. So the guide means is that and this is just rephrasing GDPR, by the way. So the guide means that I help the organization to engineer for privacy, to engineer for data protection. So that's the privacy by design approach. The second one is the watchdog, is I have a monitoring role to look where Uber could improve or should improve. And the third one is the ambassador role, in which you as a Uber user or an Uber non-user could redirect yourself to me in case you have an issue, but also I am the ambassador towards the data protection authorities across Europe and actually across the globe. So that's the role. What I also think is relevant to say is that as part of that role, as GDPR also says, independence and a level of autonomy and absence of conflict of interest is relevant. And that's why Uber has decided to have this as a separate organization. So I run a little organization which runs alongside our privacy legal, our privacy engineering, and our broader product organization. And I report directly into the highest level of management, in this case, the chief legal officer. That also provides me with a viewpoint and a level of neutrality, so to speak. It also means that when you tell me something as a user, there is a level of confidentiality I apply to that, statutory confidentiality. Okay, that's a bit about the role. Then a bit about what does this role mean in Uber, because you know probably Uber for once or twice or even more frequently having taken a ride. You may have offered food through Uber Eats, so you probably have a consumer side view of what we do, but there's also a business side of view, which is our drivers, the restaurants, and the couriers that make it happen. And we mediate between you and to those drivers, which effectively means that we operate at what we call the intersection of the digital world and the physical world. And that sets us a bit apart from some of the platforms Alex referred to, but it also means that what we do can have, and what our users and what our drivers do has an immediate effect in the physical world, which means that it touches upon other fundamental rights, such as the right to security of person or safety. It also touches upon the right to conduct a business for those drivers. to get an income. So there's a lot of fundamental rights at stake, which means that because we are literally data driven, data is not just for us GDPR, not about privacy, but it is about reconciling the different fundamental rights, which sometimes means that we need to infringe a bit more on the right to privacy of a driver in order to foster safety for a rider. And that's part of my role as a DPO to help drive that and make it happen, but also flag where things are not okay. Now, being data driven also means that we're very much driven by algorithms. The algorithms we develop ourselves, we have developed, but also those we source from other companies, such as Microsoft. That's also part of the oversight role. And in doing that, of course, we want to make money. We want to make money so our drivers can make money. 75% or more of the revenue we generate goes to these drivers, goes to the restaurants. But it's a pretty old school business model. You pay, we help deliver, and we pay out to the drivers. So there is no other type of business model, that's an important consideration as well in the way things are driven. Data is a means to an end, not an end in itself. In our case, very
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's some of the background. I'll leave it here, open to questions.
Absolutely. So let's give the floor to Alex to ask the first question, so he breaks the ice for everyone else. And then I have a couple of questions myself, and then anyone who wants to ask a question. I see many are coming into Slido, so I repeat again, if you want to go into Slido, you can submit them there, or you can write me in the chat if you would like to speak, and when you want to speak, you just let me know, I will unmute you, you can start your camera, and please keep it short, and remember the topic is privacy and data. Alex, off you go for the first question.
So yes, my first question is this one. I think that one of the biggest issues when it comes to basically the handling of data between big companies, and one of these big companies which is also gathering this data, you have geolocation data, you have data on subscribers is Uber. And I think that one of the biggest issues for users and consumers out there is transparency. How is this data being handled? And one of the biggest issues that I believe, no, not as a legislator, but as a citizen, as also a consumer making daily use of these public platforms which have become public utilities today, is the transparency of the system. How much information and how does Uber tackle this issue of transparency, of explaining basically to your customers, to your subscribers, how this information is being handled? Because I think this is a question of fundamental importance, and I believe that if we give as much as transparency as possible, as much as information as possible to our consumers, we will basically gain more trust of our users and of our consumers. So how is Uber implementing this principle of transparency, this principle of giving information to users of how their information and personal information is being handled, or like for how long it is being kept, how it is being deleted, etc.
So yeah, thanks Alex for the question. That's a great question, because actually, indeed, transparency, knowing what happens to your data, is totally fundamental and core to being able to verify whether your rights are respected. So that's critical. One of we use various methods for that. So one is, which you will see everywhere, which is the privacy statement, which basically explains it a lot. But unfortunately, inherently, it does it in a way which is kind of complex. So one of the things we've added to that is an additional layer in which key questions are being answered, which we also update from time to time based on feedback we get. So that's one other layer of transparency. A third layer of transparency is not only towards riders, but particularly also towards drivers, is how do we match riders with drivers, or how do we assign a driver to a rider? So one of the things we've done is we've built a website which we've called What Moves Us, which explains how this matching and dispatching actually works. So there's another layer. One other element we do is sometimes just in time or on the spot notifications and explanations in the app in order to explain people. Now, that then a third layer, of course, or a third layer, already a fourth layer, is specific privacy service. So one of the things we're currently in progress in launching is actually to show you as a rider what a driver can see about you and for how long. So in a way, if you've just done a trip or while you're doing a trip, we can display to you what the driver can see, because the transparency is not only about how we use the data as Uber to deliver the service to you, but also what the driver can do. So we're building these kinds of elements in there. One element to add to that is that it's always important to also make a distinction between the audience of these explanations. So the audience, of course, is our riders and our drivers. And actually, what I find in many cases is that they start to take an interest the moment they think something is wrong or not okay, and then they should be able to find that information, which means that part of the information should also, and in many cases also does flow out of our, what you could call help desk. We call that community operations, which can help you with specific questions, but also allowing you to ask those questions. So we also make, if you want to, our privacy legal team available to ask and answer specific questions to. And then as a last layer, I'm still there as well. So there's a lot of that explanation going on. What's key here is that these explanations should not be seen as legal language, but more like a manual. And that's kind of the mantra I'm using internally. These explanations need to be at that level. While at the same time, and this is what part of the challenge for a company like Uber is, this explanation also constitutes a representation, and things may not work exactly the same in the US or in Argentina as in the EU, but due to the internet, everybody can see everything and connect everything. So
and
there are some of those challenges.
On this, Simon, I stop you for 1 second because there are 2 questions on the Slido before I give the floor to Adam Bartha, who raised the hand. I would like to ask you a quick question. So they are asking, how does it work, privacy in different countries? Because I suppose that in the European Union you have the GDPR, and then how does it work in the US, whether there is the same or not? And then Christian was asking what will happen to the UK after Brexit? Will it fall into GDPR or will it fall into under something else? You can give us
a lot of countries have different rules, and even the EU, of course, the GDPR actually, of course, is more of a directive than a regulation in reality, particularly when you go into the physical world and employment. So there is a lot of differences which you need to cater for. So what we've done at Uber is defined a set of global privacy principles, which are kind of our gold standard, which resemble a lot of what GDPR does. But other countries have different rules. But what we see is that a lot of countries are adopting GDPR style rules. India is in progress. Brazil has done so with the latest additions in the US to the California law effectively. So it's moving towards GDPR style. But actually what I'm promoting here is Convention 108 Plus as the global standard for this. So that's at that level. And what we need to do is accommodate for these differences, because they can have impact, particularly when you have to make trade-offs or reconciliation of various interests. With respect to the UK, for us, the UK, for us at Uber and many other companies who operate out of Europe partially, the UK will look like South Africa with GDPR. So effectively, it is a third country. That's what we currently see, with a law that in principle is identical to GDPR, which means that substantially we don't have to change anything. But there's 2 key elements there. There's something that if you make a mistake and you get an investigation, you could get 2 investigations by ICO and your national lead supervisor or European lead supervisory authority, which could also result in what sometimes is called double jeopardy. You could get a double fine. So that's one. The other thing is, and that will depend on the actual agreements and whether the European Commission will grant the UK an adequate decision. If there is an adequate decision, transfers are easy. If there is not, we'll have to find out what we do then. So that's
Super.
kind of, so it's actually it's not as complex in the terms of privacy than all of the other areas are.
Super, thank you, Simon. Adam, I think you are able to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Sure. Thank you so much, Alessandro. And thank you very much for the discussion, Simon. I would like to push you a bit further on the kind of distinction between various markets. You said that GDPR is being copied all over the world, but we still see that many of the products are not available in Europe. That is probably available in the US and some of the Asian markets. How do you see kind of the trade-off between the technological development at Uber and the kind of protection and compliance with the more stringent European regulations in the future? Can you imagine that there will be different product developments for various markets simply as the result of more stringent privacy laws here in Europe?
Well, the reality is that we do have somewhat different products, not necessarily towards the consumers. We try to make that as straightforward as possible, but the products are different in South America for drivers than they are for than in Europe, for instance. And this also has to do with the fact that, for instance, the safety situation in South America is quite different from the safety situation in Europe, which effectively means that we may have to do some additional elements in South America we wouldn't need to do in Europe. Let me give you an example. Before we admit a driver to our platform, we want to make sure that this driver adheres to certain standards. And part of that involves a background check, which in South America you can do while involving, for instance, criminal history data as a private company, which we then do because it's expected in that country. It's not something we can do in many of the European countries because GDPR prohibits us as a private entity to request for criminal history data for good reasons, unless in local legislation, in national legislation, some conditions have been created. Now, I happen to know that in the UK, some of these conditions have been created, but if we go to other countries in Europe, those conditions do not exist, which effectively mean that we lose on that capability, and we can debate whether it's useful or not, but this is an example of a difference that currently exists for I would say, good reasons, rooted in history, but also dependent on the local situation, in which I think it's fair to say that the general level of safety, road safety, public safety in Europe is different, maybe higher than in many of the South American countries. So if there are distinctions in the product or the experience a user has, there need to be good reasons for this, and it's not a black and white. Privacy is better protected elsewhere than here, or the other way around. So that's kind of the answer.
Thank you, Simon. Adam, if you have any follow-up question, please feel free to raise your hand later. Simon, I push you a bit, and I would like to ask you a question. So we've done a survey on Slido before today, and we asked whether people read the terms and conditions when they subscribe to any app or service. We didn't ask specifically for Uber, but we asked in general. My question is the following. The majority of the people said no, never. They never really read fully what's written there. And on this, I go back to what Alex mentioned earlier. We saw this new TV series which made quite some noise on Netflix on how data are shared across different platforms, etc. So my question is, firstly, why such a long disclaimer when it comes to data that companies collect, and also what data Uber collects and whether they are shared or not with the third-party companies?
So I first want to refute that it's a disclaimer. It should be an explanation. That's one. I also think that in Europe, that's the way GDPR says it. It is an explanation and not a contract. But in other countries, that's seen differently. So it is of a contractual nature. It is not in Europe. Why is it lengthy? For the simple reason that what we do and what other companies do is complex, and there are certain rules that force you to explain all of this, which is fine. But then that's where you end up. Now, nevertheless, we should still make it easier for people to understand. There's work ongoing there as well, and one of the companies that's actually pushing this is Apple. The 8th of December, they will have something like nutrition labels, which everyone needs to fill out. Apple, in their role as gatekeeper in this case, will do that as well. But also, I would also like to stress that there should not be a need to first read everything. There should not be out of context or surprises with what happens to your data. And if there are surprises, you should be able to find out. I've always said, and this is also from my past life in consumer electronics, where I was at TomTom, we always said, and it's the same here, a privacy statement should be like a manual. And if you would ask who reads the manual before he starts to use whatever he's bought, you would get similar answers. You don't read it. No one reads the manual of his car. That you only look something up if you have a question or don't understand it or have an unexpected experience. And I firmly believe that this is what privacy statements should be. And I find myself recognized in a way in this view also by the legislators across Europe, who basically say you can't have unfair terms or effectively surprises in terms. And there's a lot of work going on there. Nevertheless, the explanation needs to be still there, but part of verifying those explanations, of course, also is the role of the DPO to make sure that it's there, that it works, and so on. So that's how I would push back a bit on the statement, these privacy statements are so long, manuals are thick as well.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I see also Alexander Kulitz, a member of the German Parliament, has joined us. So, if Alexander, if you want to jump in at any time, just let me know. Just let me know. I think you can unmute yourself or mute yourself whenever you want.
Yes, thanks. Sorry for being late, so I couldn't follow up, but I think that's a very thanks a lot, and I completely agree. I think it should be, because it doesn't make sense, and a lot of what we have to do with the data law protection at the moment in the GDPR. I mean, all of us, we have the issue that cookies are popping up all the time, and that wasn't the intention of having the GDPR. And I think everybody's annoyed more or less. Enterprises are, entrepreneurs are, but also the users. And it has nothing to do with the protection of personal data if you have to do all this cookie allowance stuff every time you open up a website, etc. So I completely agree. If you look at the privacy notifications, it should be much more kind of like the manual in a car. You should be able to look up what is happening with your data the minute you really need it. But I'm not a big fan of what we did with the GDPR in Europe. But yeah, I'm sorry for being late, so I didn't follow up at the beginning.
No, thank you, Alex, for this. Fantastic. I promise that it will be a short call. I have a few other questions, Simon. I'll throw them at you, and then you let me know. We try to respond to all of them as soon as we can. So there is a question regarding the role of AI as a DPO and in privacy, whether this is something that can help you, or if you are already implementing it, from Alice. And then I also ask you already a second and follow-up question. They are asking how Uber will be dealing with international data transfers going forward, whether this is happening or how you see the future of this.
Shall we tackle the AI one first? Because I hate the term artificial intelligence, because there's nothing artificial about it, because it's man-made and it's not intelligent at all. So the way I like to see it, it is advanced predictive algorithms, which, for instance, can be used based on training with data. So again, it starts with data and algorithms, and this is also how I tackle this if personal data is involved. we try to look at what's actually happening, what are the inputs, what are the expected outputs, and how do we maintain human oversight. And I have to say that, so I arrived at Uber 2 years and 3 months ago, which is just after GDPR started. And one of the first things I looked into what these algorithms do, because for a company like Uber, AI is a tool chest, a tool set, which is being used. But one of the things I immediately noticed is whatever we do with AI, there is an immediate, visible, significant or insignificant effect in the real world. And what I mean with significant effect means it works, it does something useful, like assigning rights to drivers. And then, because the effects are much more visible than in the pure online world, there happened to be, when I walked into the company, already some sort of a kind of a regular management cycle, which measures the effectiveness of what's happening. So what I'm saying actually is that we should take these predictive algorithms and the way they are used and put them back into normal managerial processes of a management cycle, oversight, and so on. But if you, as a company, would start for the first time with AI, see it as magical, and do not have the management boards that realize this is another method of creating value, which also requires managerial oversight in terms of funding. Does it work? All of those elements, but you leave it alone to a bunch of geeks who you have no control over, then you get the sorcerer's broom. Don't go there. So that's the way how I tackle it, being a DPO, ask those questions. So much on AI, quote unquote. Next question. Shall we do that one on?
Yes, we can go. We can go to the next question, which was related to how data sharing space. Sorry, apologies. It was related to international data sharing in the future.
Yeah. So under GDPR, we have a set of protections which actually need to apply also when the data travels to third countries, as they're called, third countries like the US, India, Argentina. Now, an observation, of course, is that if you are traveling, once COVID is to the level we can travel again, you travel, for instance, by plane to, say, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, you flip on your phone and you want to order an Uber. So you're effectively already triggering international data transfers. Of course, we were aware of that, and we were aware of the fact that we needed to provide some level of protection, which means that we, as a technology company with a lot of physical operations, were making sure that that data was protected through technological means, such as heavy-duty encryption, which ensures that the data is only delivered to you and to us, and not to intermediary partners who may be intercepting data on cables. So to us, international data transfers are an inherent part of the way we do business and how you travel around. Now, of course, we also have data sitting in the US because, well, your trip history and so on. So that sits in the US. And effectively, what now has happened over time over is that we have found that in some countries, the level of protection granted by GDPR to us as European residents may not be possible for companies to grant that to people elsewhere, because there may be state actors, as they're called, who might intervene and put companies under pressure to hand over their data. And this is a nice way of bringing up the NSA and Snowden conundrum, but let's not forget about Egypt and Hong Kong, should you travel there, or we would have travel data there. Effectively, it means that currently the status is that we as a company are required under GDPR to somehow deliver that same level of protection, whereas in my view, the actual problem is more of a transatlantic political nature and not so much a privacy or data protection nature, but alignment in the intelligence community and the governments overseeing those intelligence communities to align on similar and basic principles. So I already referred to Convention 108+. This is one of the reasons why I'm so much a fan of Convention 108+, the Cybercrime Convention, because they provide the mechanisms and the tools for that, which is actually, I'm calling upon the politicians to start thinking about the equivalent for the intelligence services community around the globe, which then would help us to solve this problem. So in the meantime, we're trying to do our utmost to protect the data through the means we have available. But there are certain means we don't have available.
Okay, super. Yeah. Thank you, Simon. Before we go to the conclusion, I think Joshua has a question for Alex, if Alex is here. So let me unmute Joshua. Should be able to. Perfect.
Yes, can you hear me? Wonderful. Alex, I wanted to pick up on what you said in the beginning, and it's a more general question, not really related to Uber, but maybe in fact. I know, or let's put it like that, I've seen a Social Dilemma as well, and I was quite disturbed. I had a feeling of and some kind of understanding of what might be happening with the data, but this kind of specific profiling is really crazy. And what the guy from Facebook, for example, said that they don't even give social media to their kids is really eye-opening as well. So my question would be, as I know two people, I know like two kinds of people, the people that are really privacy concerned, they buy like Threema, like messaging apps that are really safe and secure. They have like online accounts or email accounts that do cost a little, but they are secure. So there's no data use, or at least as far as you know. But that's like a small margin of people. Then there's a lot of people that really don't care. They either have no clue about what their data, what could be achieved out of it, what business cases, what, like I would say even fucked up psycho shit could be going on, like to put up a profile about them and to manipulate them. So how could we like how could we proceed in educating people that their data is not something to be thrown around with, but that is valuable, and how to even like to come to this point of as well of what is it called in the data governance data, like if you donate it, you know, because it is really interesting. If you donate your health data, for example, this can save lives, but if you keep your data away,
Joshua,
people that would.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joshua. Alex Saliba, MEP, yes. Please tell us what you think.
Joshua, this is a very good point that you have made. And I believe that one of the biggest issues that we have in our communities and our societies is the visibility and basically the knowledge about what is being done by your data. So on the one hand, as EU legislators and as EU policymakers, we cannot stop or hinder the free movement of data, because data now has become one of the most precious elements of industries, not only big tech industries, but all industries out there. But at the same time, there must also be more knowledge, and knowledge comes also apart from national EU initiatives to educate users, educate our consumers, and make them more knowledgeable about the importance of being aware of what you post, of the trail that you leave in the online ecosystem. That's important. But at the same time, as EU legislator, we cannot sit and wait for member states to take action, for our governments to take action. And we need to attack those business models which thrive upon gathering sensation by attacking and using sensationalist content, harmful content, and gathering all this data. So the DSA, I believe, is a golden opportunity. It's a golden opportunity for the EU as a whole to advance our values and strengthen our values. And the value of having privacy across the board is one of the fundamental values that we should protect. And I believe that with a number of initiatives that and proposals that we have moved forward, for example, in the DSA, the extraterritoriality element of the DSA, the Know Your Business Customer, strengthening Article 5 of the current e-commerce directive. So all these procedures, which basically are targeting indirectly also the business models of these big tech companies, will ultimately, first of all, create a more transparent environment, a more transparent ecosystem, so that people are more aware of what is going on with algorithms, with advertising. All these issues are interlinked. And at the same time, we attack at the very heart those business models which are creating a toxic environment and which basically are infringing upon this fundamental right. But I think this is the starting point, and I conclude with this point, which I open my remarks with. Privacy is a fundamental right. And the same level of protection that is afforded to users, to citizens, in all democracies, should also be offered to all users who are using the online ecosystem and using the online world. I think that if we solve that issue, and if we move the discourse in that direction and make people aware that they have the same level in the online world, the same level of protection in the online world as they have in the offline world, I think that it will start making people basically more aware of this privacy rights online.
Thank you, Alex. And I think we have a champion in the European Parliament on this, in Alex. So we will follow closely what you guys are doing in the European Parliament, and we will try to help as much as we can. Final question, Simon. Following up what Alex just mentioned. We know that the European Commission is working on this. There has been the GDPR. There is something, the sectoral data space initiative. I'd like to get a comment on what is the future holding, and what is your take on this? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's a tough question, because of course the Digital Services Act is still not known what's exactly in there, but one of the elements are these data sharing spaces. And with my DPO hat on, I have to say I am a bit worried if data is going to be shared in data sharing spaces, personal data is being shared. Because how can I make sure in my DPO capacity that users can retain control when their data travels in a sharing space and then subsequently could be shared onwards? So I really think that the data sharing spaces in general need to be amended with a lot of tools which are available under GDPR to actually make it work while protecting the right to data protection and the right to privacy. So this is not going to be easy. And the reason why it's not going to be easy is because that data sharing spaces will be first visible in areas which traditionally have not been digitized too much, such as in transport. And what we have to realize is that if you have data about an object on the road, a car, a train, we tend to see that not as personal data, but actually it is, because there's a driver in that vehicle. And we need to realize that you could find out who it is and their identity, and with the modern tools that's easy. So where we think data sharing can be done because it is non-personal data, the reality actually is that a lot of the data can become personal data. So what I really think is that we should not have high expectations on data sharing fostering the economy, given the fact that GDPR, for good reasons, sets a level of conditions which aims to protect the data protection and privacy rights of the individuals. So that will be my focus going forward when looking at the Digital Services Act, and particularly the area where the data sharing spaces will be kept. And I know for a fact that the data protection authorities in the EDPB are also looking at this closely and will advise on that as well.
Thank you, Simon. So to conclude, we're 10 minutes overboard because it's always hard to try to fit all the questions in this. But I would like to start thanking Alex for being with us, for making the introductory remark, for telling us a bit about the DSA. So thank you very much for being with us, Alex. I'd like to thank Alexander Kulitz for joining in. I'm sure that in the German parliament, you will be working on these topics quite some. I would like to thank all the people that intervene, Joshua, Adam, and all the questions on Slido. And of course, I'd like to thank Simon for being with us and for being so open to discuss. I think that we don't need necessarily to look at the things in the same way, but we need to work together to make sure that everyone can contribute for the better. I hope that this format, which is quite new, was interesting. It was a bit of a test run, so thank you, Simon, again for being our guinea pig in this sense. And I wish you all the best, and we will keep in touch for the next ones that will come. So thanks a lot, and have a wonderful day.
Bye.